My name is Diane Cobb, and Irwin Luck wants me to tell this story about how my name got changed to 3B. When Baba came to San Francisco many years ago, and I was just a little kid, he had me come in the car with him one time, and I complained to him that everybody else was given a nickname, like Energy, and he had a gesture for John Bass and so forth, but there was nothing for me. So how about me? And Baba said, well, let me think. I'm going to think of a special name that no one else has ever had. Now let me think. And he put on this very thoughtful look. And after a while he said, there's B, and there's B, and there's B. And that means Baba's beloved, now yes, baby. So I was kind of dejected at that because I was a baby, but I was pretty happy too because I was beloved. Okay, is that enough?
Okay, let's go in the back.
Alrighty.
Just explain what we're doing.
Okay, Irwin Luck wants me to explain that we are going in the back. We're in the back now, and Irwin Luck would like me to tell you some stories about how I met Baba. Well, when I finally did get to meet Baba, which was after I had been waiting for quite a long time, because the first time Baba came, he had that accident. We were at the airport in San Francisco, and we were all, very eagerly waiting there. And someone had a great big yellow, orange, beautiful lei, and they said that the oldest Sufi that was Edamiti, could put the lei around Baba when he came. And so everybody kept waiting, as well as for Baba, for Edamiti to show up. And they waited and they waited and they waited, and Edamiti was sick or something. And so they said, well, if not, then 3B, or Diane, can put the lei on Baba if Etta doesn't show up. So I began to wish very hard that Edamiti would not show up. Well, pretty soon the plane came and people started pouring off, and I was looking and looking, and my folks came down the gangplank. They were returning from Myrtle Beach, and Joseph Harb came, and Carrie, and so forth and so on. And I was looking there, and I saw these two very handsome, tall, dark Indian men, and I'd always had this big thing for India. So I was really gazing at these men, and I looked a little lower between them, and there was Baba. Anyway, I saw these two tall, dark, handsome Indian men, and looking a little lower between them, I saw Baba. And so I ran up to Baba, and I gave him this lei, and I still remember that I don't remember. Many people who've seen Baba immediately had a sense of who he was, or some experience or something, and I don't remember what happened in that second of being with Baba, except that it was very dark and warm and cozy in there. Am I supposed to continue? Anyhow, just a second later, everybody was rushing out of the airport as fast as they could after Baba, who moved very quickly. That was the thing about Baba, was whatever he did, he always seemed to be on the move, and always knowing what was up and what you were thinking and what was about. Well, that evening at Holiday Lodge, a girl came by and asked if I could help her wash up some dishes and plates and stuff, because she was going to use them to bring some fruit to Baba. And her parents had got this idea of her bringing the fruit to Baba, I believe. And I thought it was a pretty good idea myself. And so after a while, I said, well, could I come too? And so she said, okay. In fact, she almost seemed inclined to let me go by myself. So anyhow, I got to Baba's door and we knocked on it, and Erich said, come in, and then he said that I could stay, you know. And then that was a time of all the times that I was with Baba that I remembered, just that maybe it was 20 minutes or half an hour of the times when I was with Baba. That was the time that he was the sweetest and the most kind of glowing. After that, everything that's happened to be since then is seemed sort of like a well, it was the gradual unfoldment of what happened just in that half hour or so. And I'm not going to tell you what happened in that half hour, so ha ha ha. Is that enough? Well, after that first meeting with Baba, Baba was very sweet to me and spoiled me absolutely rotten. And from the films that you've seen of Baba with me at that period, you might get the idea that poor Baba was being victimized and led around by the nose by me, and that's true too, that I was pushing him around and telling him to look there and go here and everything else. But well, after that first meeting with Baba, Baba was very sweet to me and spoiled me absolutely rotten. And from the films that you've seen of Baba with me at that period, you might get the idea that poor Baba was being victimized and led around by the nose by me, and that's true too, that I was pushing him around and telling him to look there and go here and everything else. But at the same time, Baba really, I must say, appeared to like me, you know, which, I mean, he likes everybody, and it's always a fresh surprise to people that he likes them with all their bad parts and everything, because he just seemed to always want to have me around with them, and he was always telling me how much he liked me, and etc. and so forth. And so, of course, I got a very good idea of myself at the end of this time, and when Baba went away, I was really crushed. And it was only when he came back to Myrtle Beach much later that I began to see that this state of being the beloved Lamb of God could not continue indefinitely. Because, well, it all changed like this. Well, let's stop this now. I can't. Well, a lot of my memories of Baba were driving around in a car, which Baba did a lot of at that time because he was doing a lot of sightseeing. I think this was someone else's idea, not his, but anyhow, I remember vividly going down Lombard Street with Erich and Nilu in the car, and Baba was just having a terrific time whizzing down this hill, and the others were they just looked sick. They were just green. And Baba was asking if they enjoyed the ride and all that stuff. Then another thing was that Baba would tell my father that he had to be back at the hotel in like 7 minutes, and it was, you know, in the noon rush, and my father, who's usually a very devilish driver, a very, I might say, pushy driver, was, for, you know, kind of for the fun of it, was just having a terrible time trying to make it back to the hotel in these 7 minutes, and he didn't, but Baba forgave him. Then, look out, you're going to fall over that tricycle, I might say, for posterity. Then, Baba would sometimes tell me things about Mera, and apparently, from the things he told me, I gathered the idea that Mera was a very special person, and I was, you know, jealous of her. And he used to say things like, Mera loves me best of all. And I would think, yes, but I will soon catch up, and so forth. And another thing Baba promised me at that time was that he would teach me the game of Parcheesi. Then Baba would sometimes tell me things about Mera, and apparently from the things he told me, I gathered the idea that Mera was a very special person, and I was, jealous of her. And he used to say things like, Mera loves me best of all. And I would think, yes, but I will soon catch up, and so forth. And another thing Baba promised me at that time was that he would teach me the game of Parcheesi. I made him promise that, and he never did teach me Parcheesi, so he still has to. One thing that happened while we were there was that my father came down with pneumonia. And I still remember Baba climbing the steps up to his room, and he put his hand on my father's forehead and took it away right away like it was hot. Too hot to touch. And then he said that my father would be well in, I forget, something like 2 days or something. And he was well. Then while we were there, the hotel was robbed, and I had the feeling, as you often get the feeling when you're around Baba, that things like that have some wider significance than just Holiday Lodge being held up. One time, I'm telling this because Irwin Luck says that I'm supposed to tell what Baba said. One time, I asked Baba very coyly, well, what had happened actually was that Baba was having Erich give a talk on greed and how greed was really the thing that would slow you up in your quest for spiritual advancement. And I asked him in a very coy way whether it was all right to be greedy for him, and he said yes, that was okay. And I really was greedy too. I was very pushy and elbowy and everybody out of the way because here I come. And at that time, Baba was putting up with that, which he didn't forever. Then I remember always badgering Baba and telling him that I wanted to go to India and live with him. And Baba acted always like this is an entirely new idea, as though people hadn't been proposing the same thing to him for about 40 years already. And he would say, well, don't worry, in 700 years did not appeal to me at all. And so I said, no, it has to be sooner than that. And then Baba said, well, never mind. And I swear that he said this. He said, in 5 years, you will come to India for 5 years. And he said, and you will be looking for your father, and you will be very angry at me. And he never did tell me, I think he said that I would be looking for my father and I wouldn't find him. So anyhow, this put me uptight, and the next time that I saw Baba, some years later, I asked Baba what he meant by that, and he turned to Erich and he said, Erich, did I ever say anything like that? And Erich said, oh no, Baba, you never said anything like that. And then I said, well, what did you mean, Baba? What did you mean that I would be looking for my father? And then he kind of admitted that he said, I'm your father. And as it happened, in 5 years, I did go to India, but it wasn't for any 5 years. It was more like 5 minutes. Because what happened was that we had gone overseas to live in Iran, and I was so intent on getting to India that I had my father, who had some kind of, he was sort of a dabbler in astrology. I wanted him to figure out when I would make a big trip. And so he figured it out, and he said, I'm not sure this is right, but it looks right. He said, at this certain time, you will be making a trip halfway around the world. And so I said, oh, goody, halfway around the world, that's India, Well, what I didn't know, and I didn't count on while I was Xing out all the days until this fine day that I was going to go to halfway around the world, was that I was already practically halfway around the world. I was in Iran. And when that time came for me to go halfway around the world, it was halfway back to California. So, but I did kind of pass through India on the way there, and it's true that my father, Baba, would not let me see him that time, and so I was looking for my father, and I didn't get to see him that time. He wouldn't let me even get a peek at him. And also, at one time, I was extremely mad at Baba, like I thought that I would never be able to be, and I still remember that very vividly. Now, the second time I saw Baba, that was in Myrtle Beach. And on the plane over there, I remember thinking in the plane that this was really too good to last, that the way Baba had been so nice to me the first time, I mean, how could anything except God realization be a letdown after that, you know? So I was thinking that maybe things would have changed. But at the time, when I first came, it didn't seem that way. Because the first thing Baba had us do is he had Kitty and Elizabeth, I believe Elizabeth was there, and then a lot of the real old-time Baba lovers come into his cabin, the interview cabin there at Myrtle Beach, and me too, and he said, now 3B, come over here, sit right by me. The interview cabin there at Myrtle Beach, and me too, and he said, now 3B, come over here, like a lamb to the slaughter. I went. Shall I keep on going? So he had all these old-time Baba lovers there, and he kept saying how much I loved him and that stuff. And then he turned around to these people in the room and he said, everyone here in this room is jealous of 3B. So that made me feel funny, because I thought something was going to happen, and I was right, it did. Anyhow, then he said, okay, and now 3B and I are going away to eat some lunch in my house. Goodbye, everybody. So, anyhow, I went off to this cabin with Baba. And Baba had Audie serve us a wonderful meal there with chicken, and I still remember how I was trying desperately to ladylikely eat this chicken leg, which even jumped off the plate onto my lap while I was sitting there trying to be so extremely good. And after a while, Baba said to my father, is 3B old enough to drink 7-Up? And I said in this withering tone, of course I'm old enough to eat 7-Up, Baba. I'm 15 years old. And Baba said, well, I'm not sure. Lud, is it true that she's been allowed to drink 7-Up? And I was really beside myself by this point, but my father said, oh yeah, she can drink 7-Up, Baba. So Baba had my father pour me this tall glass of 7-Up, and Baba felt it for a minute with his hand, and he said, no, I don't know. It's rather cold. I think she might get a cold if she drank this right away. And so, anyhow, I just couldn't stand this idea that I was being treated like a baby, you know. And so Baba, in a minute, he said, now, try it again. He tried it again, and then I couldn't stand it anymore. And so when Baba's back was, I thought, turned, I took that glass of 7-Up and I drank it all up. Well, the next day I woke up with the worst case of laryngitis I had ever had. And it was so bad that I wasn't even permitted to get out of bed. I had to stay in bed for a lot of the time that Baba was at Myrtle Beach. And I kept thinking, well, any time now he'll show up and see how I'm doing, because that's what he did to my father when he had pneumonia. But no go. Baba was absolutely left me strictly alone. And because, as we all know, Baba hates nothing so much as catching a bad cold. So there I was, and Adele Walken and Phyllis Frederick were my gentle jailers, and they absolutely wouldn't let me get any place at all. So after a while, Baba, who was all concerned, had a number of people come trailing through with their favorite cold remedies. And they were things like strained, boiled carrots, cold, you know. And then they had things like, I had to make this phony little steam tent and stay under it suffocating in this hot steam for about 3/4 of an hour. It was awful. It really just was plain awful. And none of those things cured the cold, of course, because there's no cure for a cold, but it just has to wear itself out. So eventually it did. Oh, and another thing that Baba said when I was eating lunch at his house is, see, I'd always been very lazy in school. And so Baba asked my father, well, how is Diane doing in school? And my father said, well, Baba, I'm afraid not too good. And so Baba said, oh, and is Bill also not intelligent? My grades really picked up after that session at Myrtle Beach. Well, the day after my cold had finally spun itself out, I found myself walking along this back road that went to Baba's house. And there, amid the sand dunes and the ant hills, I met my aunt. And we two kind of got together and made a force. Put down that hatchet, Josie. And we decided that we would combine forces, and every morning we would walk up and down along this road and wait for Baba to come by in his Jeep on the way to the barn. I think it was a Jeep. Anyhow, as we walked up and down, we would sing loudly all kinds of silly songs. And I do remember that the first day that while we were walking up and down there, I was sure that Baba was going to pick me up. Because, after all, I was his darling baby. And also, I had just gotten over this cold, and he would be so happy to see me. But he didn't. He rode right by. I think he may have waved, but that was the extent of what I got. And so, every morning, because in spite of this letdown, well, you know, it's just like when a lover has nothing to do with his sweetheart anymore, then the sweetheart gets ever more anxious to see the beloved, and so that's the way I was. I was zipping up and down that road and hanging out in every darn place I could think I could get even a peek at him, and he was absolutely giving me the go-by. I still remember an awful time when Baba, it was just a rigged job, because they were showing this picture of Baba with me at the first time I saw Baba in San Francisco, and he was being so kind to me and always wanting me with him, and Baba was in that place, and I couldn't help crying, and Baba just left, you know, in this very grand way. It was pretty crushing. So, but when he left at that time, I finally figured out that was not going to get me any place, this crying and being. He left at that time, I finally figured out that was not going to get me any place. This crying and being sorry for myself wasn't going to get me any place or anything. Because, should I continue with this? Okay. Because Baba, there's nothing that drives him further away than feeling sorry for yourself. And so if I could just manage to keep up a good front, maybe that he'd just let me hang around him at all. And all this time that I felt that he was absolutely having none of me, I used to hang out in front of his interview cabin, and I would draw little things on the ground and stuff and wait for him to come out. And while I was sitting there drawing, and because I was somewhat artistic, I guess I was kind of showing off, I was drawing all these wonderful things in the ground. And after a while, I heard people kind of murmuring around me, and I just went on doing it. And then I think it was my aunt gave me a kick. And I looked up, and there was Baba, and he was looking right at me, and he had been looking at me for a long time. And it really gave me a creepy feeling, because, well, I think to think that he was there all the time, like I think he always is there all the time. He's just waiting for you to quit jigging around. So, anyhow, after Baba had just ignored us for this very long time, we thought that we would have to take up something to combat it. And so we started the SSS, which was the Secret Society of Stinkers. And that was my aunt and I. And we thought of this clever plan, because the men had the alligator club, and they got all that attention and Baba hugging them and everything. And we were the woman, and we didn't get anything, and none of those ladies had enough brains to come up with a club of their own is a good thing, you know, to catch hold of Baba by. So we started the Stinker Club, and the avowed motive was to see Baba at any time by fair means or foul, see. And so we were always sneaking in and around, and finally we decided that just to really get a good interview with Baba, that we would make up all these membership cards with all the little skunks who were the emblem of our club, each skunk on each card, and they all had names like Sunflower or Petunia or so forth. And then we had this giant thing for Baba, which was the biggest stinker. Oh. That was him. So,
come to Baba's attention?
Well, we brought it to his attention. We ran right up there and knocked on the door and gave it to Baba. And Baba, that was, I guess, about the longest interview we had there with Baba. He patiently listened to all the baloney about the Stinker Club and laughed at it. He really laughed at it. And, we handed out the cards to Erich, who I think was Magnolia, and I forget what Audie.
What did Baba say when he got the Stinker Club?
Well, I just remember him laughing uproariously at it. And then we explained to him what a skunk was, and that he also was one, too. And so at the end of it, Baba smiled at us